Dobra. Słychać mnie, jak mówię teraz? Mikro. Tak? Czy teraz jak mówię, to...
Teraz wszyscy słyszą.
Mhm. Dobrze. Będę się starał. Możemy zaczynać, tak? Słuchajcie, dobrze. Dobra, to ja tutaj widzę swoją prezentację. Muszę jakoś tak stanąć, żebym ja też to widział. Dzień dobry. Welcome at the Microsoft Poland premises, where we're going to have a twist webinar today. The agenda for today is welcome, which we already had, kicking twist and startup Europe in Warsaw. After very brief introduction, the webinar will be provided by Marcin Franz. Later, after his presentation and the speech, there will be questions and answers and closing remarks and questions from you, and then get together meeting where we can discuss. And those who are online could ask us some questions. Sorry. Just for your information, just a little bit brief information about the Twist project. The Twist project is the action that is provided. Twist is the Horizon 2020 action that provides transregional web innovative services for digital and mobile entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. The project is co-founded by the European Commission through the Startup Europe program. Very brief information for you, for your interest. It could be very important and interesting for you as well, that the Horizon 2020 is the biggest EU research and innovative program, which has almost 80 billion euros funding available. That in addition with the private funds makes the promise that we have some breakthroughs and discoveries, and the world first class startups will appear thanks to our initiative as well. Startup Europe itself aims to strengthen the business environment for the web and ICT entrepreneurs so that their ideas and businesses can start and grow in the EU. Why Startup Europe? Just because it delivers the value proposition on 3 layers for the startups, which is connecting startup ecosystems through Europe and help startups find skilled employees, access to right combination of finance throughout the EU, grow across borders. As well for the national and regional initiatives and policymakers, and value proposition for ecosystem builders, investors, accelerators, and corporates. Among the Startup Europe activities, we are one of the 5 new projects that connect and match 16 local ecosystems. I already mentioned that this is the reason why it was set up, just to find the skilled employees wherever you are in the EU, access to the right combination of the finance through the EU, growing across borders, access to the infrastructure. Our project is the Twist project, for to recall you. What is the Twist aims? What are the Twist aims? The Twist aims at connecting 4 existing local web entrepreneurship startups ecosystems and hubs from Rome, Stockholm, Lille, and Warsaw. Rome is, Lille is also backed with the pan-regional investors network from Berlin. And we are aiming to provide new services for web entrepreneurs, focusing on scaling up and competing in the global market through involvement of motivated mentors, potentially also interested to become investors in the startups and joining the board if possible. The application of new models for businesses startup creation, including the lean startup model and the promotion of the tailored management process for the new startups. Inclusion of process and methodology to validate the development of product, learn from the client's feedback, and access to the right type of finance. Our objectives is cutting the high failure rate of web and mobile companies through the mentorship programs and access to different experience of our mentors from the local ecosystems, developing the concept of co-living, co-learning, and co-working, exchanging methodologies and competencies among the 4 ecosystem stakeholders. The twist ecosystem. The twist ecosystem consists of ecosystem from Rome, Lille, Stockholm, and Warsaw. Well, the 4 different realities, 4 different networks, 4 different mindsets, but we all have in common the one ecosystem in mind that will build the value for the startups from this local ecosystems. Briefly, the ecosystem in Stockholm, defined by our partner. This is important information for you to know that this is something to be some sort of a benchmark for us as well. As you can see, only in 2013, 330 million US dollars were invested in startups. More important that Sweden represents 3% of the world population, but has 33% of the world's more than 1 billion exits. Some of the success stories are Skype, Dice, King, MySpace, World, Spotify, SoundCloud. So I think this is somewhere that we can gain the knowledge from, of course. The lead, basically, all the partners are the opinion leaders in their respective countries and have a very strong status, and that's why they are the ones who were chosen to become a leader partner for the ecosystem. So the UA Technologies is our partner for from Lille, from France. They have 5 offices worldwide. They have in the network the cooperation with 7 universities, 30 colleges, 300 labs. This is the numbers that are given are pretty huge, because this is 160,000 students, 140 startups, jobs that were created thanks to the activities, and up to date 20 million US dollars fundraising. The Rome, the Lazio Nova, Luisen Labs, Meta Group, those are the partners from Rome. I should mention while I was in the lead that once again that they are supported and backed up by the Attendees. This is the pan-regional investment private investors network that is delivering the mentorship and expertise, and of course access to finance and capital. So this is how briefly the ecosystem from Rome is described, so that there are institutional investors involved, the crowdfunding platforms involved, accelerators, incubators, co-working spaces, labs, and thanks to the activities, 316 innovative startups were raised, and 24 startups funded by Lazio Innova, so our main partner and the leader of the consortium. Also, I just leave it blank, as it is so much happening that almost every day we can face the initiatives that are almost taking part every day. So a lot of the startup grinds, business links, and the initiatives that are happening. So if we would like to match the total number of incubators, accelerators, seed funds, it is very massive. We are also facing the new horizon of structural funds to be also dedicated for startup ecosystem and financing innovations. And I leave it blank as well, because I want to encourage you to get more details on our website, Digital Twisters. What are the twist objectives? Is to, from high growth potential startups into existing scale-ups, and we wanted to achieve this via thanks to the 4 European ecosystems reach of experts open to collaborate, access to knowledge, thanks to the vertical experts and the international mentors for startups. My remark here is that in Poland we do have a lot of innovative startups, but less competences or maybe less experience in building the startups that have international experience, especially international exits. So our partners from Stockholm, Berlin, Rome, and Lille definitely have the mentors who already did such a success story, so they have their own portfolio. Access to markets, co-living programs in different ecosystems to understand new markets and define international strategies. Access to clients, co-working hand in hand with large corporates and public administration. This is something which works very well in other ecosystems, and I think it's beginning to work well in Poland. And access to finance, international business angels, and venture capitalist networks. How we wanted to do it via the actions like co-learning, co-living, co-working, intensive co-learning services. So this is the example what we are having here today. So this is one of the tools or instruments how we wanted to achieve it. This offers to startups coming from the 4 ecosystems and intensive co-learning services made by meetups and webinars and one-to-one sessions, hopefully pitchings as well. Offering specific knowledge according to growth stage, organizing and integrating different topics, putting together highly qualified mentors with credible business experience. Professional co-living experience. This offers to startups coming from the 4 ecosystems a professional living experience made by a residential exchange program. If that will be our case, this is something which is possible to be done. Residential exchange program for networking between scale-ups, so the startup companies that are ready to do the business abroad, sharing office spaces, creating margins for contamination, access to new markets. Challenge, this is also something that we are planning here in Warsaw, hopefully maybe with Microsoft and the other big corporates. This offers to startups an innovative co-working approach for open innovation to organization of challenges in collaboration with public administration, which we have also in Poland a confirmation that they will be willing to cooperate, and large corporates. Like an example, even today, is the cooperation with Microsoft Poland that they enabled us to organize the webinar here. The challenge is one of the main instruments we are using in order to offer innovative solutions to existing problems and needs. And the webinar, which starts, the real part starts right now, will be held by Marcin France, an entrepreneur, experienced entrepreneur, and early stage investor with more than 10 years of practical experience in the ICT industry. And so Marcin, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So the basic question to the audience: can you hear me well? Should I be louder? Should I be quieter, or is it okay? It's fine? Great. Okay, so let me just. Okay, so as Krzysztof introduced me, well, I would consider myself as an entrepreneur. This is the best description I could probably provide to you. And I'm in the ICT industry for, let's say, 10 years, something more. Well, let's say 10 years. I would consider myself as a visionary who believes in something, who has a passion to bring new ideas into life. I would say that the most credibility given to me to say something in front of you is that I'm crazy enough to think that some of my ideas, some of my projects, some of my startups can actually make a difference, can change the world, can do this big thing. I'm an early stage investor as well. I'm the guy who prefers to buy himself a company rather to buy himself a new car. This is quite of this craziness described above. And on the daily basis, I'm trying to connect the dots between the technology and business, because without connecting those dots, you cannot actually do the things in startups. Why we meet in Microsoft? Well, Krzysztof mentioned about our plans of having some common initiatives related to the TWIST program. I have a very personal relation with this company. Thanks to the Microsoft, I realized that I don't want to work in a corporation. And this was done in a quite funny way because of the Imagine Cup competition. This is the competition which is held by Microsoft, it's an annual thing. In 2011, I gathered the team of students and we competed in Imagine Cup. Actually, those students won the competition. Well, we had some story afterwards. Well, what was the most important thing is that after 3-4 months after this competition, I quit my job in corporation. I was working for TomTom, and I started to work with startups. And I had a really nice job in TomTom, I must say. I sometimes miss it, but from the point of view of recognizing what I've done. So I've been managing multiple software development teams across the world, in India, in UK, in Holland, and in Poland as well. And it was a really nice, challenging job. I had teams of experienced engineers, software developers, graphic designers, and this team was everything but not experienced one. They had everything except being professional. But they had something I missed in corporation very much. They had passion. They had motivation to do something, to bring things forward. And this is why I decided that perhaps it would be good that if such teams, such motivated teams, can be mentored, can be taught, can be given the possibility to make a difference, to be crazy enough to think that their ideas may change the world. Actually, the idea of this project didn't change it. Well, it was one of the failure stories, because one of the 10th is a success story. 9 actually are failure stories, but I will come to that later. Imagine Cup itself, where for those from Microsoft, you know the competition from the others. This is the biggest students' innovative competition, I would say, across the world, as far as the technology is concerned. I very much consider technology as an art. I like this metaphor because, well, the best source code comes to you when you least expect it, and this is why I very much admire the people, the artists who would like to create their technological masterpieces. And I consider Imagine Cup as an art gallery for those artists to perform their art, to create what they can do the best. And what we did actually in Poland in 2015 is that we created Microsoft Imagine Cup Business Acceleration Program. So we wanted to turn those artists into vicious capitalists, and we gave them possibilities to do that. So we started this together with Meta Group in Poland. This is one of the partners of Twist Initiative as well. We started this initiative with 20 hours workshop. So we took all Imagine Cup participants, we put them here in Microsoft for 20 hours. It was between Saturday and Sunday. They had to listen to me for 8 hours. This was quite a challenge, but afterwards there was a bigger challenge. They had to pitch in front of investment committee for 12 hours, more or less. So we spent 20 hours together. We found that there will be more or less 4 or 5 projects to be accelerated. We started working with them, and Meta Group at the end gave the investment commitment of more than $280,000, approximately 1 million zloty. So they committed themselves to invest in those ideas 1 million, and this is how we turned, let's say, people who do art to people who will fortunately do some money. So we turned them from artists to those vicious capitalists I mentioned at the beginning. I personally spent more than 150 hours working with those teams. And why I did it? Because I have a dream, like this guy. I know that chances of becoming such an influencer in case of me are close to null, but it's worth imagining, it's worth trying, it's worth dreaming about it. I have a dream that there will be startups in Poland, as Krzysztof said, who will be capable to do big things, that will be capable to bring their ideas worldwide, to bring them forward. And most importantly, I did it because I'm a startup junkie, I admit it. I'm addicted to innovative ideas, really. I can quit on sleeping, on eating, when there's something which interests me, when there's something which I can follow. And this is enough introduction, I must say, from me. So what is a startup? Let's start with some definition. What are those things I'm so passionate about? Because many people think that startup is a smaller version of a big company. So a smaller version of Microsoft, a dollhouse, where we do something but on a smaller scale. It's not even close. Startup is just a temporary organization. It's an organization which exists until those people who create this organization find a scalable and repeatable business model. And this is a difference, because startup at the beginning is a series of untested hypotheses, nothing more. So you imagine that you can solve some problem, or you imagine that you can bring some added value to something. And what are the odds of success? Quite low. 5 startups out of 100 will succeed, or 10 will survive after the 4 years, because those red ones are those startups which failed after the first year. Well, we cannot see the colors very well, but there is red, green, yellow. Anyway, those 5 at the end are those who survived 4 years of work and have something to offer. And 90% of startups fail because lack of customers. It is not because they had an idea of creating something, and it was so complicated that they cannot do it because of a technology, of something, well, which prevented them. They usually fail because they cannot find the customers, or they don't know enough about the market they're operating on. And I had a couple of examples. couple of mine examples where I failed spectacularly. But the reason is that the founder or founders suspect that they know what customer wants. The problem is that the startup at day one has no customers at all. So they only guess what my customer want. And this is only a guess, a wild guess, I would say, because if the founder is not an expert in a domain, then he has at most a blurred knowledge about the domain he's operating on, about the market he's operating on. So he or she has a vision, nothing more. And if you want to build something out of it, then you should verify it as quickly as possible. The second problem is that people tend to believe that they know what kind of features the product should have. And I've been doing ICT industry, as I mentioned, for 10 years. In the traditional turnkey project, 35% of initial requirements change. 60% of functionality are rarely used or never used. And this is a problem because if you, as a startup, create something and there's 40% of functionality which is used and the customer don't want to pay for it because it has only 40% of functionality which he or she needs, then you have a problem, then you fail. And in case of a startup itself, the product, because it's a very innovative industry, might be outdated even before it's released, because you created unneeded functionalities, and those innovative ones, which brings added value, are not created. And hundreds of hours of work and tons of source code are just aside, simply go to garbage. This is one of my projects. This is one of my startup projects. I believed that it should have 4 features. And those graphs show how advanced were those features. So I delivered completely feature 4. It was ready to be shipped. There was some proof of concept related to the feature 1, and well, feature 2 and feature 3 were almost done. They worked most of the time. And after first customers, I found out that the feature 4 is not required at all. That people simply didn't want to pay for it, that they didn't need it. The feature 5 and feature 6, which I didn't take into account, were needed actually. Feature 2, forget about it. Feature 3, well, some proof of concept will be enough. So this is how my vision changed before I thought about the project, and after I tested it on the real market. I presented it to the customers. This is Google Wave. You should like this project in Microsoft because it failed. It spectacularly failed because they wanted to reimagine how email looked like. And the problem with Google was that they didn't take into account their customers. They introduced overcomplicated tool and no one wanted to use it. No one wanted to reimagine the communication, and they failed. And in the case of such a corporation like Google, it was just a couple of millions of dollars wasted. If you have a startup and you waste couple millions of dollars, then you have a problem. It is like Shakespeare's to be or not to be at that point. So you either do a project, you either sell the project, or you simply stop existing. And if you are in the ICT industry, you know this. You know the waterfall software development process, which is usually applied in big corporations where you analyze, design, code, test, and release. If you're in a software development company, you know that it's a bullshit. It doesn't exist in the real world. You usually have no time for testing. And if you have no time for testing, this is I would say, the best case scenario in waterfall. Usually you have limited time for coding. So it doesn't exist. The problem of startups and the problem with the current approach is that people who are in this industry, who are giving you the money, try to encourage you to take this waterfall approach, to do it together with some business development and to create a business plan. Because business plan is a business model plus waterfall, and it's a bullshit again. Because the failure of the software development process is one problem. If you apply those paradigms into your startup, then your startup will fail as well. As such, as the whole organization. If you take into account requirements, do design, do implementation, verification, and maintenance, and you introduce your product into market, you may end like Google Wave, and you probably will. And this is the problem. Webvan. There's a story from the year 2000. This was a great American startup. The goal was to revolutionize the process of grocery business. The capitalization of those market at that time was about 450 billions of dollars. They wanted to revolutionize the process with online ordering and the same door-to-door delivery. This is what the Tesco is doing nowadays. Well, the company gathered 800 millions of investment, quite a lot. They hired professional executives, built their own inventory. They started the whole process, built the software, and prepared for the large amount of customers coming. So they had this approach. They announced requirements, they provided design, they implemented it, they verified it that it works, and then it simply didn't work. Because after 24 hours, after initial public offering, it was called bankrupt. And the company did everything according to the business plan. There was one problem. Customers don't read business plans. They don't read it. And Web1 built the complete infrastructure before having its first customer. So they didn't check the process. They assumed in their business model about 8,000 of deliveries per day. The amount which happened actually was about 1,000. So they were 7,000 deliveries less, and well, it simply didn't work out. And I quoted Martin Luther King. Now it's time for Mike Tyson. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And this happens with startups, usually, when you do it according to your business plan. So those are tools for companies like Microsoft. If you have an established product, then with existing customers, with known markets, with known business model, then you can create your business plan for the new release of Windows or Office, whatever you would like to release. No one except Soviet Union and VCs require 5 years plan to think about complete unknowns. Well, you try to create a plan based on pure hypothesis, of pure assumption, of pure guesses. And there is no business plan which survives the first contact with the customer. It simply doesn't exist. And the failure itself in trying is an integral part of the development process of searching of a business model. As I mentioned at the very beginning, startup is a temporary organization. It's an organization which is devoted to find repeatable and scalable business model. So you will fail. You will fail continuously until you find. Well, it doesn't have to be useless though, this document, because usually if you work with investors, they will require it for you. This is the current state. I believe this will be changed. This will evolve. But the startup, I would say, industry is quite fresh, quite new. So the people wanted to include in them these corporate things they are used to. So business planning. So lots of analysis, lots of documents, which are based on pure assumptions. But this evolves. This will be different, I would say, in a couple of years. This is different already in Silicon Valley, but we'll have to wait until this will be different here in Poland, here in Europe. It helps the founder to think about the big picture. If you don't have a big picture and you write 40 pages about it, then you should have some big picture. But if you don't have a big picture, perhaps you shouldn't do it at all. But this is a separate discussion. One thing which is good about business plans is that you create a competition analysis, which you don't create otherwise. And this is very important because you know actually what are the competitors, who they are, what are they doing. This is my business plan for 2010. We, as a company, earned about less than 200,000 of zlotys, and therefore we assumed that in 2014 we'll earn 3 million. The company bankrupted in between 2011 and 2012. This is the story. This is exactly running a. I'm basing what I'm saying to you really on my experience, because it's always to fail when you are supposed to find the best solution. So this company failed, like as mentioned, 9 out of 10. There's something which is called discounted cash flow, and this says how your company, how much does it worth. So, basing on this assumption, the company was worth about 5 million in the day of 2010, based on pure assumptions that in 2014 we'll earn something. So we might probably think that the investment being put into this company was a complete nonsense, and now I know it. You know what fugazi is? This is the quotation from the Wolf of Wall Street. I'll try to play it. Do you have speakers connected? Okay, so let's try. It's fairy dust, exactly. This is another project. This is Life Circle. I mentioned the team at the very beginning, this team from ImagineCap. This is their project. We are supposed to provide an appropriate amount of blood each time it's necessary. This is why we won ImagineCap, because we had a really nice vision. And the solution tried to deal with two biggest problems of the blood donation system, the low number of donors and organizational inefficiencies. It worked more or less like this. So we had a problem. There was an accident somewhere. The blood was required. It was transported from other places, and in those other places, those blood banks needs to be supplied. So we had a smartphone app for users so that they can be called by blood centers and that they can donate blood. So that then there will be some transportation improvements so that this blood balance will be the same the whole time. It's a really nice idea because you often hear about the blood donation problems, especially in summer, that the blood is required and so on, but there's no blood to be used for medical purposes. And it happens all the time. And we thought, well, let's solve this problem. We had a business model. We thought about cooperation with pharmaceutical companies, which really needs this blood to perform the medicines, to create the medicines. We wanted to work with blood centers, with donors to create a community of donors we'd like to monetize, and also with CSR departments of various corporations and companies. And we thought about this business model. We wrote business plan at that time. We started, we launched, and we failed. And we failed because we didn't know that these two guys, so pharmaceutical companies and blood centers, have already some kind of deals, very unofficial ones, I would say. So this is more or less like pharmaceutical companies and doctors. They have some kind of deals, and we simply weren't aware of that. So we created our software ready to be developed, ready to be deployed for blood centers, ready to be deployed for the blood donors community. We had it all, and we need to put it into trash. Because, well, we simply couldn't sell the solution as it was that time. What I would do differently right now is I would probably create the software from the bottom up. So we will do something for donors so that they create a community, so that you have something, you have some arguments to talk with blood centers, with pharmaceutical companies. I would do this right now, but well, I did it differently in 2011. And this is also the failure of creating a product before. Actually, we consulted it with blood centers, and we consulted it with pharmaceutical companies. The problem is that we didn't know enough about the market because we're not from pharma industry. If we were, we would know. And this is exactly what I was talking at the very beginning. If an entrepreneur doesn't have enough knowledge, then he will fail. There's a silver lining in this story. I especially put this slide because there's Piotr here. So this is the guy from my team. And this is 2015 ImagineCap team, which won Polish finals of ImagineCap competition, which goes into Seattle in 2 weeks. There is Piotr here, who was this person. So the silver lining of this story is that I managed to create a leader who has its own startup. I'm teaching him all the time that he should do it iteratively and not to create a product before he sells it. Most importantly, he gathered the team of a very, I would say, ambitious students who would like to do something differently. So there's a silver lining. But in general, the project was a failure. There's a Facebook's Red Book. It's a book which is devoted for all Facebook employees, showing the vision and the mission of the organization. And there's a nice quotation there that there's no point in having a 5-year plan in the industry. So half a year they meet, they analyze the current status of the industry, and they do some research, what they should do next. They have a vision, what would they like to do in 30 years' time, but they don't make a 5-year plan. And this is the vision which should be followed, because those who ship quickly can improve quickly. So if you put your product to market, then you can improve, then you can take a feedback. And the internet is not a friendly place. And the things that don't stay relevant, they simply disappear. There's no luxury of living ruins. Sorry. So iterate and improve. So be agile or die. And the iterative approach is all about dividing this whole scope of work, plan, analysis, design, code, test, release, into small chunks. So you do some initial planning and you deliver feature by feature, deliverable after deliverable, and you do it in sequential way, and you learn between each iteration. So if I were to provide some example, then there will be this vertical slice example. If we have an ATM machine, we can start it by creating the bank mainframe database, transport protocol, database interface, and so on. We can build it from bottom to the top. Or we can create single slices. You would like to have the functionality of cash withdrawal, of bank statement, and so on. We do this vertical slice concept. It's quite simple in theory. In practice, well, it's a hell of a problem, but this is the subject of a different story. But anyway, this is the only solution which may give you the possibility to show this piece of cake to your customer and say, hey, do you like it? And he or she can provide you the feedback. Because if you have the whole cake, then it may turn out, like in the projects I mentioned to you, that you created something which is already outdated, which is not good for a market, which doesn't have features your customers require. So you need to do it slice by slice. It's easy to tell. It's very hard to implement. No doubt about that. So as I mentioned, feature by feature and the architecture, it will evolve the whole time. If you have the software development process, then you will know about refactoring, continuous integration, about testing, but you don't waste time on unnecessary perfectionism. This is called gold plating, or you don't fall into so-called analysis paralysis. The situation when you have your system, when you analyze your bank mainframe database and you consider all the possibilities. And afterwards you find out that when you deliver this single functionality, you didn't think about the one which is really crucial. So you try to deliver as soon as possible. It's all about delivery time. So you have your releases when your product looks more or less like that. It consists of, let's say, 16 features. Then you release feature by feature. Of course, it sounds easy. It's complicated in practice. But the whole lean startup methodology is about having you doing the process, creating so-called minimum viable product, gather customer feedback, and then do some pivoting. And then again and again and again. Because if customer says, well, your minimum viable product is not for me, I'm not interested in those features, then you have to consider whether you put it into trash, you try to improve those features, or you do something totally else. But you don't waste so much time as you could do if you deliver all features at once. So basic version of a product, which containing only core features. The goal is to build the small feature set possible, and you pivot until an adequate number of customers say, yes, this is something I want to buy. Then you have your product. Then you have a base to build on. This is how MVP may look like. Are there people who watched Battlestar Galactica, perhaps? It's great. It's about vicious robots. So it started with intelligent toasters and it ended with humanoid who wanted to destroy the human race. But this is more or less the MVP concept. So you start with something very small, with very limited amount of features, and you end with something with a large amount of features, I would say. So it goes this way. Example, diapers.com. So the problem was diapers deficiency. Well, it can be quite of a problem when you have a kid. The solution was to bring cheapest diapers in town, so delivered to you without any extra costs. So you can approach problem with, let's say, at least two solutions. Either you buy the whole magazine, you buy the whole storage, you buy the warehouse, you buy those diapers, you have some contract with the shipping company, and you start to deliver. Or, as these guys did, they created a simple website, working most of the time, and start taking orders before they even have any diapers in stock. So what they did actually is that each time someone ordered diapers from them, they went to Walmart, they bought those diapers, and they transported it to the person who ordered it. So they lost money on each order. But they tested the process, they created a business model, and they were sold to Amazon for more than $500 million afterwards. So they really delivered quickly. They didn't spend time on gold plating, on analyzing. They simply delivered the solution. They invested some money in the process. They involved their wives and other people in the family to deliver the diapers across the town, but they found a solution. And this is the solution from Emerging Cup 2014. I like this solution because, well, I personally invested in it, and well, it looks more or less like this. So you have a product, you have a wall, it's an interactive wall, and it works more or less the way that if you hit the ball against this wall, you create a sound. There are some microphones, and they locate the position. So it's more or less about locating 3D sounds, locating the sound in free space. So it's more advanced than the simple game. But this is the product, and I will show you why we started the product, because the solution looked like this when I entered. So I met two guys playing ping pong game on the wall. There were 4 microphones, cable clutter, and an old laptop. This is what we started with. Well, people actually, when I presented it to them, had problems understanding what is the actual product. There was no value proposition at all. And their setup was more than complicated. It didn't work most of the times, I would say. The action points were to make it plug and play, improve design quality, and create free for aesthetic games. So we did it. This is the design, a nice curvy design, I would say. This is the implementation. So this was Nooker 1. And the Nooker 1 solution, well, we went pretty well. We had first paying customers. It was after, I believe, the 3 or 2 months of development. There were customers who wanted to rent this solution, but we had transportation difficulties because we created one single piece. It was supposed to be plug and play. So we created one single piece of material, which was about 150 kilos. So it was quite difficult to be transported, especially that it cannot be disassembled. We had some problems with displaying image on this curved shape, and there were some vibrations caused by the curved construction. And the action point was that we should create a construction which could be easily assembled and disassembled. We reduced curved shapes, and we targeted our solution. This was the time to target the solution because we noticed that kids want to use it. So we targeted the kids. So we did some construction hardening, because it's very difficult to create a product for kids because they would like to kick it all the time or destroy it somehow. And we did some safety improvements so that we don't accidentally kill anyone while using our device. This is Nooker version 2. And this is actually what we are selling right now. More than a dozen of those products were already sold. So it's going well. We are thinking about scaling the production and the selling process. But it took us, I would say, 3 iterations from 4 microphones until we had something which really provides a value proposition. So we either can sell it, we can rent it, we have some value. But we wouldn't have it if we were, well, proceeding with a traditional approach. If we were saying that perhaps everyone should get 4 microphones that get the Nooker on their wall, as it was done at the beginning. There's one temptation to do with the MVP scenario, that if you should have, if you would like to create something which works most of the time, then there's a temptation to create something very quickly. And then there is a possibility to create a shitty product, which means ship, not shit. Because, well, MVP cannot serve as an excuse for mediocrity. So you should invest in minimum lovable product. In a product that someone would actually buy, not in a product that will be minimal, because minimum products are crappy products no one wants to use. And viable products are those ones which are built by companies which are usually better financed than you. So where's Agile project management? Because it was about applying Agile to startups. What I wanted to show you at the very beginning is what happens when you don't apply Agile. And what I would like to show you now is how to do it, to provide you a couple of hints. So it's an iterative process, and it focuses on the customer value first, as I mentioned at the very beginning. So you create your product slice by slice. You present it to the customer, you get some feedback, and then you proceed. You go further. And Agile principles go beyond software development. This is a mindset. And this is a mindset for the people who need a management approach to build something quickly and iterative. And it's a mindset that cannot be learned. This is an iterative approach when you gain this practice. So you cannot be agile at the very beginning. Well, I was a consultant for a couple of years. I was introducing agile to various corporations and companies. And usually when we dealt with people, very inexperienced people, then we had some problems. The problems with the fact that they simply hadn't enough experience to think in an agile way, because it gives you a lot of freedom, which can be used for bad and for good purposes. What's most importantly is that the agile doesn't give you much guidance about how you organize your company. It's your team who should figure this out. So basically, I'm telling you that if you would like to be agile, then do whatever you want to deliver a process, because this is more what it's all about. Because there is this complexity graph. And when you have your project, which is easy from the point of view of technology and requirements, then you do something for the nth time. And this is easy. You build the next website. The technology is simple, the requirements are simple, there should be a website with some headers, footers, and so on, and some content inside. This is trivial. If the technology, well, becomes a problem, there is something new to be tested, there's something which is, well, which can work or cannot, well, this is the matter of researching. Then you try to deal with, you are trying the complicated one. The same consists of corresponds to requirements. If requirements are not defined and technology is, then you have something which is a bit complicated. You create a product and you actually don't know what you should be, what should wait for you at the end. And if you mix those together, if you have complicated technology, innovative technology, and blurred requirements, then you have a complex product. And here you have chaos. And there is a z-axis, people. And I have one regression about people. People are unpredictable. And they also add to this equation, well, the probability of failure if you don't try to find an optimal solution. And if you put the process into this, you will fail most definitely, because you cannot predict all the relations between those variables. And startups are usually operating at the edge of chaos. As to say, the clue is to find the option when and how you can apply the mechanism which will help you. So in a predictive project, a manager knows everything about the solution. The software development isn't predictive by default. You have multiple ways to proceed. You have very difficult people to cope with. They will provide more problems than solutions sometimes, but they will be challenging you. But this implies for you to be adaptive. So inspection and adaptation instead of planning, and decision based on what's known, not on your hypothesis you had at the very beginning. There's something constant in the project. This is called iron triangle. And it exists in every software, in not only software project, that if you have a scope, resources, and schedule, the triangle is fixed. So you cannot deliver more features in the same time if you don't increase resources. You cannot shorten your time if you want to preserve the number of features and preserve the number of resources and so on. Those combinations can be, well, you can have plenty of combinations. It's about saying that you can choose between cheap, quick, and good, and you always need to select two, not three. The iron triangle also corresponds to the daily activities, so your happiness is actually the balance between the health, relationship, and the work. And if you must choose between I am right, I still have a girlfriend, and I have a peace of mind, then you always need to select two answers, not three at once. This doesn't happen. So, two projects into your life, there is this one constant thing. The other are frameworks, which can help you to manage. And Scrum is one of such a framework, which tries to address, this is definition, address complex adaptive problems to deliver the highest possible values by the iteration process. It's founded of the empirical control, so not prescriptive, but empirical. You do something, you observe the results, you get feedback, and you proceed. And there's this incremental approach. So you do something slice by slice. You don't create the whole. There's one thing I said, this is the framework. There's a difference between methodology and a framework. The methodology is a set of principles. It's a complete blueprint, guidelines. The framework is a very loose structure. It gives plenty of space to be filled out with your practices. So Scrum doesn't provide you the complete way to run a product. It provides you the framework, which leaves plenty of space to you to improve. And very short how-to guide. You split your organization into small cross-functional self-organizing teams. In startup, it is usually one team. You split your work into small deliverables, those slices, and you split your time into fixed iterations. And theoretically, that's all. Because you have your product backlog, you then choose what features you would like to deliver in a single iteration. You have your sprint backlog. Those are tasks. Then you have your sprint, which is an iteration, which happens, well, it takes from 2 up to 4 weeks. There's a daily Scrum meeting, so the team meeting, which should last about 15 minutes, and it happens once every 24 hours. And ideally, at the end of this process, you have a feature. And there are some artifacts. This is the planning session, the daily Scrum, the review and retrospective, because they help you to optimize the process. So during the review, you inspect deliverable and you say, okay, we did it this way. Perhaps there should be a better way to deliver it in the future. In the retrospective, you take into account more the team stuff, I would say. So how the team could perform better. And this is what I said. So well, basically, it's based on inspection and adaptation. But Scrum is not a magic wand. It doesn't cure arrogance, ignorance, laziness, all the features of good programmers, I would say. Because, well, you know probably the quotation of Bill Gates. Bill Gates says that if I wanted to have a very difficult assignment to be completed quickly, I would do it by the lazy person, because he or she will find the simplest solution. So laziness is bad in general, but if you are lazy delivering your products, then you have a qualified engineer. But those are people you need to cope with. This is why the jobs with people are very tricky, especially with software engineers. So also the Scrum is not an answer to the question how to deliver a good software, because as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not a methodology, it's a framework. And such answer doesn't exist. I would say that after 10 years of experience in the ICT industry, I don't know a way to deliver a good software, really. Because I presume that such solution simply doesn't exist. It depends. It changes from project to project, from approach to approach, from a person to person. There are 4 pillars, on the other hand. The empirical process, transparency, inspection, adaptation. I described this empirical process, the inspection, adaptation part, now the transparency. The transparency is about having this. So if your project is a steaming pile of failure, then you should have a team who tells you that. Not a team who says that everything is fine. And the other admission, I not always have such situation, and this is what I'm trying to cope with. So if my project is going well, I would like to hear it, but if it's going bad, and this is what usually happens, then I would like to hear it as well. And the transparency is that everyone in the project knows about the project and they know what they're doing. And this is also the tricky thing to do. And most startups think that Scrum is too heavyweight, because people from startups usually don't have experience from the corporation. I mean, very young entrepreneurs. And when I present them Scrum, they say, whoa, there's too much planning session, review, retrospective, daily Scrum. It's too complicated. Well, because they didn't have to work in Prince or some other very heavyweight frameworks. But perhaps it's heavyweight. Perhaps it's too heavyweight for startups. Perhaps those meetings are unnecessary. And as far as my experience is concerned, I believe that there is a way to improve. There is a way to cut off some things, some rituals, which are perhaps not necessary, but they can be substituted and they can be do it in other way. There is other approach. This is called Kanban. And it's about three things. You visualize the workflow, you limit work in progress, and you measure the lead time, so the time to deliver each functionality. So you split the work into pieces, you put it on the board, you have some columns to do, in progress, and done. To do doing and done, you can have multiple columns. You put limits so that you are not doing, let's say, more than 5 things at a time, and then you have your project management being done. And you have those process tools. So Kanban is here, Scrum is here. There's also extreme programming. I didn't went through, but it's not important, because what I wanted to show you is that do whatever is the lightweight solution for your problems, but you have to have very experienced team to do whatever and to deliver. So all the projects, all the frameworks are actually about not falling to chaos, operating on the edge of chaos, and it all depends on people actually, if you not succeed. Because you need T-shaped people, like Mr. T from the 80. I know it's a bad joke, but I cannot resist. So they should have a wide knowledge, but they should be the specialist in the domain. Ideally, they're communicative as well, and they can work. But if you find such people, then you will have your chances of succeeding or being increased. Do you know this formula, perhaps? Someone knows? What's the formula? Exactly, this is the Gaussian distribution. Who should be fired and who should be hired? If you take into account arbitrary team from any industry, you will have this, I guarantee. So here you will have the people who should be fired. You will have people in the middle who are performing on average, and you will have people at the front who are the best, who drive the project. And of course, those should be fired. Those should be promoted. But this is also the message from the people in the middle, that they try to move either to this part or that one. But it applies to every team. And when I was in corporation, I was responsible for appraisals for several teams. I applied it all the time. And it's always the possibility to find a value proposition for each person. What person X delivers to a team? What are his features, let's say, which are good for the project? And I believe the hundreds of people I investigated and dozens of teams, I always could find the formula to do that. We're going to conclusions. Learning Agile is like, those are quotations by the way, is like learning to ride a bike. The only way is to do it by practicing. What I wanted to show you in this short presentation, I would say, is that if you would like to do Agile, and if you would like to, well, perhaps if you like to succeed with your project, you have to have a very open approach, because Agile is all about openness. So you cannot do it in a predictive way, in a corporate fashion, in a corporate manner, if you would like to run a startup, because startup is not a smaller version of a big company. There's even better quotation that Agile is like teen sex. Everyone wants to do it. Many say they are doing it. Only some actually are, and very few are doing it right. Because this is what Agile is all about. And the only way to learn it is by practicing. Practice makes perfect in all domains, I would say. Quick summary, what I wanted to show you. First of all, be passionate. If you like to do a startup, if you like to do a project, know why you are doing it. Admit that you are wrong and you don't know your customers. You must admit it. You must learn from them, not to try to present them your solution and saying that this is the only possible way. Fail fast and often. Business plans are worthless. This is the thing I sent to you, and there are no rules. Actually, we are in Microsoft because of Bill Gates. And Bill Gates is one of the richest person on earth, because once upon a time he went to IBM and he sold the operating system he didn't have. This is a nice story. If you didn't see Pirates of Silicon Valley, I really recommend it as a movie. There's a perfect scene displaying this. There are no rules in startup world. and usually sell things you don't even have. But if you have an agile team, and if you have a team of people who can be trusted, then you can do whatever you want. And have fun. You only live once. This is the first of the series webinar. There will be more. There will be more about scaling Agile. This is Greiner's growth path, growth model, growth path. And Agile is somewhere here, because in your company, you will have those phases. First of all, you will have the crisis of leadership, because if you are the founder of the company, at some point you will find out that micromanagement doesn't work simply. Then you will say, okay, I'll try to be agile. I'll try to give authority to the team. And if you have multiple teams, because your business grows, then you will have crisis of autonomy. And what we'll be talking about next time is scaling Agile on a corporation, because I actually did Agile transformation in TomTom. I transformed the department of more than 150 engineers from the Prince to Agile. And it wasn't easy, and there were exactly those problems. We had some autonomy crisis. We'll also talk about Imagine Cup examples. As I mentioned, we want to turn artists into visual. They will be presenting their projects. We have 3 teams which are currently being accelerated, which are in the business process. They will be presenting themselves during those webinars. And now it's a time, I believe, for questions, opinions, actually the free discussion, because if you want to say something, simply say it. This applies also for our guests who are online. So I believe, well, we have some time. We have those 40 minutes, so guys, let's start. Come on, don't be shy. Really? I won't be standing here 40 minutes. Well, we must talk about something.
Okay, so maybe from the beginning.
Sure.
You said about that startups should find our customers, but how?
Well, they should leave the building and search for them, actually. This is the only good answer, because, well, if you have some network in the industry, then it's always easier. For instance, for me, it's always easier to find a customer because I can go to my colleagues in, let's say, Microsoft and ask them a question if they would like to have the innovative product built by one of my portfolio companies. And this is the easy path. The difficult path is when you really need to find customers out of nowhere. If you're creating the B2C product, business to customer, then you should introduce it somehow. But there are ways. For instance, what we do, again with Microsoft, is the program in Łódź University of Technology. Well, we created internship program, and we create products there. We create products by people who are gathered to do something within an 8-week scope. And they create a product, and one of the assignments for them is to sell it. And they find ways, and usually the best way for them is to leave the building. And this is actually the only valid answer I can provide. I cannot give you the recipe. Sorry, but well. Can you provide some examples of your previous startups? About selling the product?
Yes. About leaving the building.
Okay. So with which should I start? Well, let's start with this. I told you during the webinar, the one which failed. We actually loved the building. This was a good thing. We went to the blood center. We discussed issues with them, and well, we trusted too much in our customer, which is also the bad thing actually. But what we didn't do, and what I would do differently right now about leaving the building, is that I would go to the donors communities. And we had such an opportunity which we missed, because there were plenty of donor communities who wanted to talk to us. Well, we talked to them as well, but we were those vicious capitalists. We saw that they don't have any money to give us for our products. So we rather wanted to find customers which were providing us with finances, and blood centers and pharmaceutical companies were promising us with a concrete deals how we can sell our software. And the thing about leaving the building and finding your customer was also for me at that time the experience that the customer may appear to you after some time. The person who you not consider as a customer may be your customer in the future, or at least can provide you some value. Because if we actually went this path of communicating with donors, of having the community with donors, then we can earn money on their data, which we will be gathering. This is the trend which is right now. So your customer doesn't have to be real at all. It could be a pile of data which you can sell afterwards. So this is the example I provided you at the beginning. There is some conference solution which we had. Actually, you all registered using the Conf Power solution. This is also one of the startups we created, and this was in 2012, I believe. I had a vision that there could be some value added to the conference industry. Now, each conference should have a mobile app, the networking solution, and so on and so on. And our first customer, our first leaving the building, was with the organization which gathers people across the world, which gathers Polish diaspora. So we talked to people who are non-profit organization, but they gather business people across the world. And we started to organize their conferences in various continents. We started in the US, we go to Australia, and so on. And we left the building for a conference to find our clients. So this is also our approach. There is a project from the last session of the internship I told you. This is called Mercudia. This was the solution of providing the wireless voice communication between the users of smartphones. So we want to exchange the CB radio of vehicle with a smartphone. And we actually started with a campaign. So we wrote to a couple of newspapers that there is some student project which is using innovative solutions and which is providing the added value to this automotive industry. And the response, I believe 40 magazines, 40 TV stations, radio stations, and so on in total came to us to see this solution. The solution is being commercialized because it was then transformed to the SPV. And it is being done right now. So there are plenty of ways to leave the building, I would say, and there are plenty of examples. And depending on the market, you will have different experience. But there's no common path. If you have some networking, then you can start with this. But anyway, if you would like to scale, you need to meet new people, and the openness is very important, which is a problem for me, for instance, because I'm too shy to talk to people, and it doesn't go well each time. But anyways, this is the way. You need to embarrass yourself to sell your product. Sorry. Okay, more questions? Sure.
I can see that the Agile custom development and developer similarities, if you compare it, because in some cases it's totally the same. And well, the custom development is, I think, right now quite standard for stuff.
Okay, so let me just repeat the question because I forgot it with the first one, but we have some people online. So we'll be discussing the difference, let's say, if there is any, between the customer development and Agile. And I would say there's not much difference, because customer development is about iterating and finding the best solution. So again, this is an empirical process of finding your customers, of defining your problem and finding the solutions to this problem. And actually the lean startup methodology I was referring to, this is exactly the customer development mixed with the Agile project management style. So there isn't much difference. I would say there are many similarities because people found out that the only possibility to deal with unknown is to try and fail and fail and fail and fail and succeed at some point. Hopefully that answers your question. More questions?
I have a question regarding the vertical slice approach.
Sure.
Basically, is it applicable to all kinds of projects?
No. So the question is about, well, sorry, I have always problems with people being online and offline. So the question is about the vertical slice approach being applicable for all projects, and I would say no, because there are some projects where you cannot build the vertical slice of it without building the product at all. So for instance, I always refer to that you cannot have an MVP of your jet plane because no one would like to use such MVP. Well, this is my plane. It works most of the time. Please try it. So in some case of hardware projects especially, then the vertical slice approach is a nice concept. Then you first build some kind of features. But in general, it sometimes turns out that you build the whole project and then you improve it. So if we tackle it from the different perspective, if we define the vertical slice, if this slice is big enough to encapsulate all the functionalities which are required, then probably yes. But sometimes it happens that you have a lot of work to be done before you can introduce your product. And regardless of the whole agility and so on, you will need to do this way. We had some online question. So let me read it. If you are talking about Agile all the time, why have you showed us the cascade model schema at the beginning of your presentation? So it was to show the difference, actually, because the waterfall model is the one which simply doesn't work, for startups. The customer development is all about iterations, all about finding the best solution. So the model I was presenting was to show the difference, to compare it with something which is not good. So most definitely, my statement, the waterfall is not right for you if you would like to create a successful high-tech startup. More questions?
I will come back to defining the customer and
Okay.
the product.
Okay.
What do you think about the Kickstarter? Solving the customer first,
Okay.
some idea and checking how interesting for them.
Okay. So the question is about the Kickstarter and my thoughts about it. I must say that Kickstarter is such a great business model for the people who invented Kickstarter. They receive 10% of the investment regardless of what they're doing. They are the best advertisement website. Well, there's Indiegogo as well. But this is a very, very good approach to have a crowdfunding and to have a business model out of it for people who actually facilitate crowdfunding. And now from the point of view of a startup, there are two approaches, I would say, and in my opinion, the only one is, so you can either present your idea and get funding because people would like to invest in you and would like to make this idea come true, or, which is most popular that day, you receive pre-orders. You use it as a pre-order tool. You use it as your selling tool. You can do the same on your website, saying, okay, I will release the project X in let's say 6 months time. You can have pre-orders right now. You can do exactly the same, and this will be also the form of crowdfunding, because if you have 1,000 investors, then you have no company at all, I would say. You have 1,000 stakeholders saying you what you should do, and those are not professional VC guys. Those are people who just give you the money to see that something interesting happens. So from the point of view of financing a company, the crowdfunding is okay, but if you have, let's say, 3 or 4 players, big investors who do this formula applying to startups. In the Kickstarter, this is not the case. The Kickstarter is used for pre-orders, but it happens to VC funds right now that they are seeking for such approaches, that they would like to have their projects being crowdfunded, but crowdfunded by the, let's say, 3-4 investors who give their money to something, not paying for a deliverable which should be delivered within a 6 months time, 1 year time, whatever. But this is a very nice way, and I would actually recommend the Kickstarter to any company which has a product which could be sold on the B2C market, because it's a nice, very nice pre-order mechanism. Does it answer a question? Great. More questions? Come on, guys.
I have one. You mentioned about startups that some of them, only 5 of them out of 100, I believe, survived the first 4 years.
Yes.
Could you point out any milestones or checkpoints within those 4 years, that should be reached by startups just to think that they could survive and last for the 4 years or 10 years?
There's one repeatable business model. If you find the paying customer and you can repeat the process and then you find a way to scale it, then you are there. Then you are one of those 5 startups. So if you have a software solution which is being sold to various customers and you find the new ways to approach it, you, let's say, sold 5 licenses, but you have a plan how to sell 10, and you will have paying customers who will deliver this to you, deliver their money to you actually, that you can sell the product, then you are there. But if you have, after 4 years time, you don't have a product at all, this is not defined, this is not existing, this is the solution which doesn't work, perhaps, and you don't have any customers, you do everything pro bono because you would like to gather some feedback, more feedback, then after 4 years, this is probably a milestone for you to consider different business, I would say. But if you have paying customers and if you have a vision to scale your product, then you are on the right path, in my opinion at least. Questions? Does it answer? And the question was, sorry to repeat, the question was about how you find out after 4 years that your business will or will not succeed. Questions?
I'm curious,
Sure.
how much time you spend to transform the Nuker and the zero Nuker to the final version?
3 months. 3 months of time.
3 months?
Yes.
And how much does it cost?
Well, the Nuker wall cost itself about 10,000 zlotys, and this was the cost of. This was simply the bill of material, but because we don't include the work of people who took part in it because they are founders. But it took 3 months to transform it to the state which it looks right now. It wasn't easy because software developers, as I mentioned, are quite difficult to tackle with. But most importantly, there were some people which were also difficult to convince, I would say, inside of startup founders, but we found a way.
And what happened with the project?
It's being sold right now. So it was in Microsoft, I believe, 2 or 3 times. The first time was was a great and challenging experience, I must say, because it broke down after 2 hours. Or no, sorry. We did this. We wanted to introduce it during this workshop on February. So we put it to Microsoft on Friday, we assembled it, and we found out that it doesn't work on Saturday morning. And then we had some very quick bug fixing, and it worked at, I believe, 11 a.m. something similar. So, but this was trying. So afterwards, we sold it to, I believe, right now we are processing 3 deals to paying customers, and there were already some deals being processed before, and there are plenty of people who like to rent this solution. They wouldn't like to buy it because it's quite expensive, but we have some contracts with the organizations who like to use it during the events. But it took some time, and it wasn't easy, unfortunately, or fortunately, because if it were easy, everyone would do this. Questions? Come on.
Nuker is, I guess Nuker is a good example of the MVP. The project itself is quite obvious what functionalities should have in it, but in the large project, how do you know the features which should be included in the minimal viable product?
I don't. So the question was what kind of features should be should be included in the minimum viable product, and I have really no idea when I start. So if I'm not an expert in a given domain, as I mentioned, I have only some blurred vision about what can I deliver or cannot. So there is always a guess, best guess. I believe that feature 1 should be included, but as I mentioned in that some slide, I had a project with 4 features, not as many, and none of them was actually the killer feature of the product. There is this conf power solution, for instance, where we found the repeatable business model when we are selling it to multiple customers, and what we found out is that there's add-ons feature that if we give the small features to customers, they would more likely buy the small feature, and they buy the whole system which can integrate with the small feature. And finding those small features took us 2 years, something like that. So it's always about being stubborn and iterating and improving.
And how would you define the price for the MVP?
Okay, sorry, I must repeat it, that the question was how we define the price for the MVP, and it's as mentioned, so I'm sorry, I don't have many answers, but it's always the best guess. So, for instance, we had a project with the 3D printing industry, where we would like to provide a service which is somehow of a framework for you. If you would like to 3D print something, then you don't contact the 3D printing shop. You have one page like the booking.com for 3D printing. And we wanted to define the version for the printing shops, and we want to define the pricing. So we initially we started with, I believe, $500. It was too much, but still we found some customers who were willing to pay this price per month for this service. We reduced the price a bit. We introduced some initial offering. Let's call it this way. Always when you have a startup and you have a huge discount, 50%, then you know that the person tried to have a bigger price and now he's discounting it because he didn't find the customers, he or she, of course. And what we did is we introduced the same service, I believe, at $50, something like this, with this initial discount, and we found customers at that point.
So it's better to start high and then go low, or?
It depends, actually. Well, we did it this way. But there was a project when we started the opposite way. Well, we started with a very low initial price, and we gave the system for free. And afterwards, we increased our pricing, and it worked as well. And it was simply about the building the brand, which afterwards was successful enough to encourage people to buy the solution. So the question was about finding the right place, the right price. And I repeated it. Now I recall. Sorry. This is when, yes?
So it's better to, in your opinion, it's better to start and give the product for free for some period of time, or maybe imagine a price or set a price, low price for a start. So it's better to start with free, or it's better to set a low price for first customers?
So I found my unique approach in the ICT industry, at least. So I try to give products for mass customers for free. So B2C should be always free, because in my opinion, at least to some point, the business will pay you, not for the product itself, but for the data. Because now you realize that when you have the product for the B2C customer, like the Google approach, this is the perfect one. They give you something for free, they earn on your data. And you could do actually the same. We had some projects in the automotive industry where there are people more interested in the data we get from the project than for the project itself. This is quite funny because, well, they could use it as well, but they don't want to use it. They want to buy the service of providing them appropriate amount of data because this is what they care about. I'm just referring to other thing before I answer the question. There is now Orange is selling you those Wi-Fi, 3G or LTE routers to your vehicle. You can put it into the car lighter and then you can use it. And Orange does it not to sell you the device. They don't profit from it. The producer as well. But they will have a position of each vehicle moving with this router. And they will earn on data. And this is their plan for selling those devices. So if you have the approach of putting the price to the product, then you should consider two things actually. If the customer is willing to pay, because customers would like to get things for free, and who actually should pay for your solution, because it's not always the customer himself. It's sometimes the external person who can pay from what you do with this customer at all. So but if we are talking about the pricing, the pure pricing, I usually go this opposite way. I put the high price at the very beginning. I find out how many customers can pay for this, and then I lower the price. Sometimes it's usually Well, sometimes it's usual to do the opposite way. We did, for instance, this with the conference business because we needed some reference. We couldn't start with initial pricing of a very huge amount of money because there weren't people who trusted us, because you organize an event and you would like to professional company to deal with your, let's say, registration system. And if we are supposed to organize the professional event for a professional corporation, then we need some professional references. And we find the customers who paid us a little, but it was sufficient enough to create the solution. So, but in general, in other products, in Nuker as well, we started the approach of the high price and then lowering it to the amount which is acceptable for us. Because if we scale, then we can lower the price, not the opposite way. Because if you scale, you can usually lower your price, not make it higher. So my best guess would be to start this way, but it's only my best guess. Questions?
Maybe since we're already at finance topics.
Sure.
How common is your opinion about business plans in investors where they're totally useless and we should improve them?
So investors are those people who say to you, sign under this business plan or I don't give you money. And then when you don't provide the results, there is a document saying that you promised to deliver. And this is the very nice solution. So from the point of view of investor, of course, but in general, if you find investors which are reasonable, they know that those plans may change. They know that those plans may be modified and that their solutions may be that you can find some different solutions to a problem, and that you should iterate, that you can iterate to find those. And it's all about finding a partner, I would say, not an investor, I would say the partner who understands the business, who believes the business with you. And if you need to create a business plan because your investor is a part of a group which requires those business plan, I'm not mentioning by purpose European Commissions or any other things which may require such documents. I'm just saying that there is an organization which requires something like this. Then then you of course write it, because it's also the way for you first of all to get money, second of all perhaps to look at the product from different perspectives, from different angles. And the question was about the business plan. So if they are useless, why you write them? Okay. Next question. Oh, okay.
So I guess there's no more questions.
So I will hand over to you. I will hand over to you, or?
No, I just want to say thank you to you. Basically, it was
Thank you.
really a pleasure for me to listen to your experience. I hopefully believe that you also gain this this knowledge that Martin shared with you. Yeah, so right now we have some time just to think forward, eat some cakes, and discuss more freely. As right now, I think if there's no more questions, we should finish our webinar. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you very much.
It was
Thanks.
excellent. Thanks.
Okay, so now we stop.